So we already know the defense wants Judge Glanville removed from the case. And from what I see in these comment sections, the whole nation wants Judge Glanville removed from this case, but they're challenging Judge Krause too. So remember, Judge Glanville had initially reviewed and denied the recusal motion, but then he switched it up and said, okay, another judge should decide this, and it got assigned to Judge Krause. And so the defense is like, nah, we want her off too. So they filed their paperwork, and the judge has issued her ruling, and let's get into it. My name is Jamahl Kersey. I am the principal attorney at Kersey Law. We're a boutique criminal defense firm in San Diego, California. And so let's get into the two reasons why Young Thug's motion lists why Judge Krause should not be able to decide on the motion to remove Judge Glanville from this trial. And so number one is basically that they work in the same court. This idea is that it'd be unfair and improper for Judge Krause to make a decision on this case because, you know, they work together or because Judge Glanville might be superior to her, right? And so, you know, there have been so many unfair things going on in this case, including the reason for which these recusal motions have been coming up, this secret meeting, that, you know, they're saying you shouldn't have two people on the same team policing each other. And so Judge Krause pointed out the law straight out of the Georgia court rule book, and it basically indicates that in a multi-judge circuit like the Atlanta Judicial Circuit, a recusal motion shall. And so whenever you see the word shall, it means it has to, not that it might or it could, but it has to. So it has to be assigned to another judge, and the selection shall be made by use of the circuit's existing random impartial case assignment method, right? So this is to essentially ensure fairness. We're not saying, okay, let's send it to Judge Krause. She's most likely to deny the motion. No, it's going to her on a random basis. It's like drawing a judge's name out of the hat and assigning them the matter. And so again, you can see why the defense would make this argument, them being, you know, within the same circuit, but working in the same circuit does not in and of itself mean that they wouldn't be able to get a fair ruling on this recusal motion. The second argument was that Judge Glanville made a $2,000 campaign donation, right? And so she then goes into citing the law, saying that just because there's been a campaign contribution doesn't necessarily mean there should be recusal where the contribution was not exceptionally large. Now, some of you could not even fathom donating $2,000 to a campaign, but the reality is $2,000 is not an exceptionally large campaign contribution, right? And so the campaign contribution does not make for a mandatory recusal. And, you know, this makes sense, right? Judges, they get elected or appointed, you know, based on having solid character. There is a very strenuous vetting process. And, you know, again, just because someone gives you $2,000 or contributes to your campaign doesn't mean that you're just going to bend on your morals and rule a certain way. You know, at the end of the day, you know, especially with all the pressure that's going on in national media attention that this case is getting, she knows at the end of the day, she's got to look at the law and apply the law and ultimately make a decision that is fair. And the law goes on to say that where the contribution is less than the maximum allowable contribution permitted by law, and presumably $2,000 is under that limit, then you have to file an affidavit if you're seeking recusal, and you have to allege additional facts demonstrating the need for recusal. And so, you know, in this situation, the $2,000 is going to be less than the maximum allowable contribution. So then the defense would have to cite other reasons why she should be recused. So the contribution in and of itself is not going to be enough. You know, at the end of the day, Judge Krause is going to look at the motion that the defense has filed, and I believe there have been multiple. She's going to look at all the motions, she's going to look at the opposition, and she's ultimately going to apply the law to these circumstances and then decide whether or not Judge Glanville should continue on in this case. And think about it, if this happens, right, if she decides that keeping Judge Glanville on this case would not be appropriate, it's not going to be Judge Krause's fault, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the DA could have stopped this a long time ago. Judge Glanville himself could have stopped this a long time ago. These actions were taken, they rolled with this, and if Judge Glanville gets removed from this case, another judge gets assigned this case, and it's decided, hey, we can't unring this bell. We had Kenneth Copeland testify, and there's no way we can undo this, then it could result in a mistrial. That's the reality. If this happens in this way, then, the DA, Judge Glanville, they'd have no one to blame but themselves. This is a very huge decision, right? Judge Krause, I'm sure she knows that if she has Judge Glanville removed, that this could result in a mistrial. And then, all the time and money invested into this case by the government will just essentially have been wasted. The other thing to think about in this is, as a judge, Judge Krause has ethical duties independent of these defense motions for recusal, right? If she had any reason to believe that she couldn't be fair and she couldn't rule on this motion fairly based on any relationship with Judge Glanville, whether personal or professional or otherwise, then she could recuse herself. And just to add some personal experience, I know a lot of judges. As a former DA intern, a lot of my former supervisors, they're on the bench now as judges. And I know a few judges on a personal level as well. And so when I walk into a couple of courtrooms, the judge will say, hey, for the record, I know Mr. Kersey. However, I can be fair and impartial. And there's no DA jumping up and down and saying, no, this is unfair. Like, we can't do this, right? And when it's vice versa, the same thing. And I'm not saying that the defense should not have brought these motions. Given these circumstances and everything that's been going on, I think they're acting appropriately. I think they're filing appropriate motions, and I'm just providing some context. Ultimately, the judge denied these motions and said, hey, I believe I can be fair, I can rule on these motions. And so since Judge Krause is deciding on whether Judge Glanville will carry on or not, the trial itself is on pause, and we'll just have to wait for her decision. We'll keep you posted. If you got something out of this, show me some love, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.